Hello and welcome to this week's Indo GAA podcast, brought to you a little bit earlier this week, but delighted to be joined by Pat and Dick on this lovely Monday afternoon. Men, how are we doing?
Very well.
Good, Mike. Good to be back. Sorry for missing last week. Had to do a bit of work for a change,
Has to be done.
Some of us have to work to keep Pat's big pensions going, so.
Yeah. And you're telling me, Michael, biggest figures ever last week for a podcast.
Biggest figures of them all,
I wonder
Pat.
why.
Dick, while I have you, I know you're a big golf man. Jesus, that was absolutely heartbreaking last night.
Stayed up last night after.
I did too.
Couldn't see it. Like I was 95% win rate. I think he popped up at one stage, and I just listened to his interview this morning. Like he's just raging with himself. Like, but it just
Gents just even talking about like clutch moments. That was obviously, it didn't favour well for Lowry, unfortunately, in the clutch. Donegal were very good in that clutch situation yesterday, Pat. We would question or talk about maybe whether they want to be in a league final or not. They unloaded the bench at half time. Finbar Rorty came on, Michael Murphy came on, Padder Morgan came on. They contributed 6 points between them. Morgan hit that 2-pointer at the end. They were down a man for 40 minutes. Michael Langham was barely back on the pitch, and Stephen McMenamin was off the pitch. And their unbeaten streak this year goes on, Pat, in the league, and their unbeaten streak in Ballyshannon stretches to 14 games, goes all the way back to 2009. Like, if they wanted to, if there was any case of them being non-triers or anything like that, you probably would have seen it yesterday, and we definitely didn't see it.
Actually, before talking about the game, the pitch in Ballyshannon for bad weather looked in remarkably good shape. It was an interesting game for the start. Against the wind, Donegal, the first 20 minutes or so, were playing very well. Conor O'Donnell's goal,
savage. He tipped the ball back to himself, wasn't it lovely?
What a brilliant individual effort. And you're right, the impact from the subs. Michael Murphy did a cameo, and I don't know if you remember at one stage, he did it surrounded by 2 or 3 defenders. He chipped the ball to himself. He turned, and he left Cian Hernan for dead as he ran towards the goal. You have to admire them. Like, are they interested in winning the league, getting to the league final win? I think they are, and there's no doubt about it. By bringing on those subs, and they got the impact from those subs at halftime. Like, they showed remarkable character. Like I said, 20 minutes to go, 6 points down, 30 minutes to go, 6 points down, and to come back and level the game, absolutely brilliant. And yet, at the same time, there was periods during that game where they were quite poor. I mean, Donegal, from the 22nd minute to the 42nd minute, outscored Donegal 13-1. That's some annihilation during that period. There was a couple of other things. Very unusual to see Donegal. A lot of unforced errors. Turnovers, which you don't expect. A bit open defensively. And of course, the big thing, which McGuinness will obviously be worried about, indiscipline. Michael Langan's black card, Stephen McMenamin's red card, all deserved. Like, you go down a man, and like Galway, if Galway would have, like, fair play to Galway, they looked dead and buried for the first 20 minutes, and they were playing with the wind, but playing poorly. But you've got to admire, like the way this Galway team against Kerry and in so many matches, the character they have, the young lads that he's introduced during the league. It wasn't a classic performance by them in their first half. Galway's shooting efficiency was around 55% with the win. That's quite poor. They left probably 4 goal-scoring chances behind them. In the second half, their shooting they were impressive against the wind, shooting 78%. But at the end of the day, who'll be probably happier? Obviously, McGuinness will be the happier. And Galway with the extra man, and with an extra man for 40 minutes, but particularly in the last 30 minutes, I just felt with an extra man, you should be capitalising on that extra man, because under the new rules, you have that extra man, you should be using that extra man. And I just felt they played too cautious, played too conservative, keeping possession, inviting Donegal onto them. You invite Donegal onto, and you know what the problem is, they're going to be turned over. So an enjoyable game and probably a fair result in the end. And both counties, both managers will probably come away happy.
From Joyce's point of view, Dick, once Stephen McManaman was sent off, they were, I think, 16-18 up at the time, 1-7 actually. They scored 4 points in the last 26 minutes of the game. And there was no evidence, Dick, and I was looking at it as close as I could look at it. And it's hard to get a really good vantage point in the press box in Ballyshannon because it's so packed. But there was no evidence of the extra man. And I don't know if that's kudos to Donegal because lads were maybe covering 1.5 men or kind of, been able to cover ground very well and cover space. But from a Galway point of view, there was no evidence of the extra man. I couldn't see these overlaps that you should naturally see.
Yeah, and that's credit to Donegal. Like, phenomenal effort from them. And you went back to your starting point there. Are they bothered with the league? 100%, and that's evidence of that.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like they've obviously set their stall out. If they were wanting to pull up, they'd have done it by now. McGuinness has intimated after the game that that's in our sights now. I think that was the term knocked about. So he wants to maintain momentum and certainly didn't want to be losing a game at home to knock that momentum. And what he emptied the bench and equally got the players to respond when their backs were against the wall in terms of being a man down and against the head against a good bloody Galway team. And like, it was great. Like, we got bits of football between the highlights and like Saturday night. God, I watched a bit of Cavan and Louth and like the difference. Like there's a noticeable difference now in terms of the top 4 or 5 teams. And it's great that for a long time there we were watching football and there's only 2 or 3 teams up there. There's a cohort of 4 or 5 teams. You've Donegal, you've got Galway, you've got Armagh, Mayo. We'll come to them in a minute. Really operating at a different level in terms of pace, physicality, intensity, and how they set out. Like, if you remember, I think there was 10 minutes to go. Galway were ahead. They looked, I wouldn't say in control, but they had a lead, man up, felt, and they were pushing hard. Like, they were even pushing, like, there was a lot of engagement around the middle. You know, the way, like, by comparison to, say, a Saturday night, geez, I watched Cavan, they were 10 points or 12 points down at half time at home. They came out in the second half, and here they're all tucked inside the D, allowing Louth to throw the ball about. And I'm like, what tactics is this that you're defending a 12-point deficit? Whereas actually, if you look at the way Donegal and Galway fronted up on Sunday, they were all very much engaged around that middle third. And that goes back to your point, Michael. Donegal weren't stepping off. They weren't sort of allowing Galway just to throw the ball around and kill time. They were out. That turnover of Murphy's, for instance, is a perfect example. He was out. That was in the middle third, where you don't really see a lot of turnovers because teams don't engage there. They retreat, whereas he got the hand in, got the turnover, and they got that breakaway. And that was been done by both sides. And that's why you didn't see that extra man been obvious, because it was so frantic. It was so intense. But opposing teams were engaging. Their favourite man, John Maher, done one then. Remember that time? He got that trouble. But it was very similar to Murphy's, just been that wee bit closer to get the hand in, and that just signals intent from both sides. And it was great to watch. It was a great spectacle of a game. Now, I say, like a lot of people, we're just sick to the teeth of this blustery, wet weather for all our games. It feels like we haven't got a proper championship type field game in good conditions, and the weather dictating the way the game flows. But in terms of 2 teams really operating at the top of their game, that was, and a draw was, if there was ever a fair result, there was an element of that in it. And I'd say both managers were very happy and content coming out of Ballyshannon yesterday.
Pat,
on that point, and because it is relevant, and it has been relevant the last weekend, and what just Dick talked about there, that weather dictating, that it's very hard to get a handle on a lot of the performances and a lot of the games, because the way the weather, and I mean in particular the wind, dictates the pattern of the game. And you look at, like, the big decision now for facing a lot of teams is, do you play with the wind in the first half, try to build up that big lead, or do you play against the wind, game management, run down the clock? I spoke before, maybe I spoke on this podcast, I wrote about it, that now with the 2-pointers and the influence of the wind, and when a team can get so much momentum, that maybe we're talking about a need to introduce 4 quarters in a game, where you change sides after each quarter and have 18 minutes per quarter, that it would give a fair chance to both teams. Because what you have at the moment, you have one team particularly say the team playing against the wind, it's game management, it's keeping possession. And it's leading to 35 minutes, if they have possession, of keep ball, of more and more hand passing, which we don't want. We need the game to be more a lottery. We need probably to be fairer. And I was just looking at some of the stats, the way the wind affects the game, that a team can win that middle third, have the wind behind them, and gain momentum. Derry versus Cork in 35 minutes with the wind, 21 points to 4, a 17-point swing. Kerry versus Monaghan in the second half, 112 to 3, a 12-point swing. Dublin against Roscommon, 113 to no score after 26 minutes, 16 points without reply. Louth against Cavan, 116 to 4 points at half time. Do you know, that doesn't make for a great game. That doesn't make for a great spectacle. And I think maybe there's a possibility, both for club and county, to introduce 4 quarters to equalise things a bit.
You could say the same about Roscommon Galway the previous week, and and there was obviously it was a massive comeback. But if teams get very good at controlling the game and controlling the lead, saying that it does seem like it's a lot harder, Dick, to control a game than it used to be, shall we say?
It is, and you know, Pat's not wrong, but yet we've had lots of examples of but as I said, we've had a lot of examples of those leads been cut in on, and the excitement that it brings. I think we're 5 rounds into the bloody league now. Usually you're sort of get a couple of bad weekends and it's fine. We have bloody every weekend. Like I was following the games on my phone, and I seen Roscommon, Dublin were ever ahead, and I said, another gale blowing down the Hyde. The only surprise was the wind was blowing the other direction, not usually to the graveyard side.
Way.
Oh, it was, yeah. Every time I've been there, it's blowing down the graveyard side. It was actually blowing the other way that Dublin had in the first half. But yes, you just knew it was.
Cork played with the wind in the first half against Derry, and we're 4 points behind at half time.
Yeah, just shows you.
It's actually cruel, lads, when you go down through county grounds. Like when I think of winds, I think O'Connor Park, always a massive breeze blowing in one end. Salt Hill, usually Wexford Park. Like it's amazing the amount of them that are facing that way, where there seems to be a massive prevailing wind blowing into nearly always the same end, and it, particularly now, and with 2-pointers and stuff like that. And Pat, the reason probably Galway were so efficient at times against the breeze was they chose their shots really carefully as well, because you had to get in to within a certain 25-30 yards before you even took your shot. But just quickly, Dick, and I throw it to you, Galway, the great entertainers. Like, Jesus, you can't say that they don't entertain us week after week. And in fairness to Joyce, he said, I think in the off season, that he needed to identify and they needed to get more forwards. Limo, Canela, Oisín, McDonald, Kieran Mulhern. They have plenty of new forwards and new attacking players. And, the way he was talking, Shane Walsh and Damien Comer, like their returns are anything but guaranteed, and they kind of need to move on in a way. And if they're fit and able, it's a bonus. But they are some entertaining side. Yeah,
and you could sort of like. Poor Joyce as PJ Manzi called him last night. He's a bit of a grisly character when he's not happy, and he'd not be afraid to show that. But you could sense in his post match comments that he was happy. He's chirpy. He sort of knows, even though they're sort of mid table and they've sort of coughed up a few points, but they'll be fine. They're in a good place from where they might have started out the year. He's sort of found players that he knew he needed to if there was any point in him coming back. But he's not coming back to win more Connacht titles and sort of get a run in Croke Park. He's coming back to win an All-Ireland, and he knows, and we've talked about this before, to do that, he has to find more up front. He can't rely on the aforementioned names that I'm not saying to let them down, but that consistency, when you're putting all your eggs in the basket of a few players, that's a big ask. So, and he's got that. If he gets nothing else now, he knows he has that. If not for this year, because these are young lads, right? These are panel players now for the next 5 years. So that Galway team, a lot of them are on the right sort of side of the age spectrum. So he's got a summer now to plan for, and he's got the players in the right place. He's going to have a tough job now if the other boys come back fit, and if Thompson to come back. Like, he's got sort of 8 or 9 really good strong forwards. Paul Conray appeared. We weren't too sure he was going to feature. He was back. missed his shot at the end to win it, but he had to take it. Somebody had to step up, and if there was any one player, he'd be the man that you were going to get to do it. So he's obviously seeing something. They're solid at the back. You know, they've a good proven defence there and good footballers. You've even other boys, John Daly. So they're building a really strong panel, and that's, you know, that's what you're going to have now to sort of survive the slings and arrows, as the man says. I was watching Hamlet at the weekend, so I was watching refreshing on my Shakespeare to get through what is going to be a very tough and demanding league and championship on the bodies, because of the pace of the game, that you're going to have, you know, 20, 25 top players to pull on, and that's what he has. Yeah. You know, when he'll survive in the league, he'll get enough points to stay up, and there's no guarantee he'll come out of Connacht. We'll come to Mayo in a minute, but he's already got his sights fixed on a quarter-final and a panel ready to have another good role at Sam, which he wasn't sure would he'd have. So you'd have to think he's very content with where they're at the minute.
Pat, I'll just throw two at you from a Donegal point of view. Yesterday, Michael Murphy joined Neil McGee as the most capped player in Donegal history, 194 competitive appearances, and that's with 2 years out in the middle of it as well. I'm sure he'll hit that 200 number at some stage this year. And the other one I'd say to you as well is Gavin Mulroney. Like, we don't, like, McGuinness was, I'd say it was kind of blurred, his answer about Sean Patton and when he's going to be back. Mulroney's the only player that has played every game this year between McKenna Cup and League. Hasn't been perfect, but he can kick off the tee off both feet.
Yeah,
he can go along. Like, I don't know if you that 2-point free into the breeze when it did not veer off a straight line. He definitely is offering something maybe a little bit different to them. So just a two-pronged question: Murphy and Mulroney.
Look, Michael Murphy is one of the greats of the modern era. I mean, a leader on and off the field. And like I said, it's what you mentioned there. That turnover that Dick talked about in the middle, that wasn't his ball. Like, he shouldn't have been. And he turned it over, got it, and just everything he does, outside of his leadership on and off the field, outside of the fact that he's a brilliant role model, it's just his decision making. He just makes one was a pop pass, the other was going for a point. He's just absolutely brilliant. It'll be interesting to see what role Jimmy McGuinness will use him in this year.
Just quickly, Pat, he mentioned about commentary around Michael Murphy, and you said about him listening to everything. Like, it is clear that I don't know what commentary he's talking about, or what podcast, or who said what, but it is clear that he listens to everything.
Well, so Jimmy, I think if you want my advice,
talk directly to him.
Just between you and me, forget about the bite. I'm feeling Jim will use Michael Murphy as an impact sub this year rather than starting him from the beginning. And I think the lift he could give to the team coming on is vital. And the Mulroney scenario is very, very interesting, because he does offer that short kick out, that option with right and left. And okay, he had a bit of a meltdown at times yesterday, but his kickouts are very good. His frees, his free taking, he's been exceptional in the league so far. Actually, it was quite noticeable yesterday. And bear in mind that Donegal and Galway are two of the best counties in Ireland for 2-pointers. And given the wind yesterday, there was only 1 point. A 2-pointer scored from play by each team, which I was surprised. But Jimmy McGuinness, like, in fairness, he's introducing no different than Pádraig Joyce, but he's introducing a lot of newcomers. He's building up a very strong panel. There's no doubt about it. He has competition for places, and it's an interesting dilemma and conundrum for him for the weeks ahead and for the months ahead. But Donegal are a serious animal, an improving, evolving team that are getting better, and a better team at the moment than this time last year.
Interesting to hear him talk in the post-match as well about how the 20s are basically training with the seniors most of the time as well, which can only be a benefit to the 20s, who I think were beaten narrowly by Tyrone, who went on and won the All-Ireland. So be interesting to follow their kind of fortunes over the next while. And there's lots of lads been thrown into the league fray that are all under 20, which is great experience for them when they drop back a grade. Dick, you mentioned about Mayo. Typical drama obviously with Mayo as well. Finished 1-point winners against Armagh, 2-17-22. And as much as you'd love to dilute the Kobe hype, like, it's hard diluted after his cameo yesterday.
Well, sure, listen, I didn't get, obviously I wasn't on last week, but I was at the Monaghan Mayo game, so I was there, you know. So where were you on the day that the Kobe, or the shot JR, so where were you the day that Kobe made his debut? So I was sitting very glum in Clonus watching him, and Yeah, it's a curious one now, right? I know we're 2 weeks into it. Is this helpful for Mayo in terms of winning All Ireland? I like it's a lot of hype. Like my understanding is that he's leaving after his leaving cert. Isn't that correct? Like he's sort of gone midway through the season.
No, I
Isn't
don't
that
think so. No,
or is that is well
no.
that's not sure because that's what sorry, that's what all the talk was
And I
around me
think
in
not
Clonus
alone
last
is
weekend,
he,
Pat, right? So
I
maybe that's
think
even changed in the last
I
week. I
think
don't know.
as far as I know, he's even available for Crossmalline in the club championship. It's after that he's going.
Right.
Oh
Okay.
wow,
Well,
okay.
that's not the message I got. I got that they said, "Oh
Right.
no, he's all going. He's going the minute he's done his leaving. He's heading off, and so he's not going to be around for the championship." That's. I thought it was all curious. Why is he involved
Well,
at
now
all?
just I will
Type
say,
thing. Now, that I don't. I could be completely wrong on that, but
leaving
that's
cert is mid to late June, so like he'd still be,
yeah.
you know, he could be playing games during the, but that would bring it to quarter final definitely anyway.
Yeah.
Depending on, there's obviously a bit of mixed messages. I don't know about the Crossmalina thing, but I would
No.
agree with Pat to the point of surely he wouldn't be getting as much game time
No.
unless he was going to be around for a,
You're right, Michael.
yeah.
Well, that hasn't been clarified, so maybe that's the question needs to be asked at some stage because that was the talker and the Mayo ones around me because they were all I was sort of a bit glum and I next thing they were all cheering about this sub coming on and I wasn't paying attention to be honest with you. And next thing here he comes and they're all talking about Kobe and this young lad had the phone out filming him and I think he bloody left it on for the 20 minutes he was on. He got plenty of footage and there was all this sort of hype and I was like, oh right, and now it was phenomenal to watch. Like I'd say we only got the highlights last night, but I haven't seen him get a ball in his hands yet that he hasn't either got a score, created a score, or made a good decision on. Like he has literally had a flawless entry into senior intercounty football, and
you're right. The point where it was highlighted last night. Yes, he caught a brilliant high catch. He scored a brilliant goal against D. He scored 2 lovely points yesterday. He shows blistering pace. But I thought this was only a guy in his second senior game. And the Armagh defence, they're as grisly a bunch of defenders as there is. And he took them on and he went straight through the centre and shook them off.
Yeah. So in terms of Kobe, the hype is real and all the rest. And I get seen it firsthand now. I'll be honest with you, Mike. Old school Monaghan. I was like, whatever, but anything, letting a young lad come up there to run your agate and kick one forward without anybody putting a hand on you. I was like, no, there's still room to let these guys know what senior intercounty football is like, and maybe he learned that as the summer goes on.
He needs a miserable fella, experienced fella to show him and take him down to the streets.
Oh, stop! But listen, I think if he's going to be around for the summer. Like that's the sort of marquee player, the Clifford, the Murphy. That's a generational player that can literally throw a team up on his back and win an All Ireland. It's not. I've always said this about the Murphys and the Clifford. It's not just what they can do themselves. It's what they get more out of the players around them. They make better players of players around them because they actually make good decisions on the ball that will feed other players. So the likes of O'Donoghue and Tommy Connery and all these players could feed off a player like that. It's early days yet, but at the end of the day, Mayo aren't going to have a panel all the time that they're going to win an All Ireland. They're starting to build something that they can realistically compete again. They talked about last night as well. Lee Keegan made a good point of more left-footed players, so they've a bit more of a balanced spread. So yeah, now again, they sort of let themselves down the previous week in terms of not showing up against Donegal, so they're not, no more than Roscommon did at the weekend. They're not the finished article, but they're definitely trending in the right direction. And if that young lad's going to be around, there's no reason to think that they won't continue that way.
Pat, just outside of Kobe, Mayo, like even bouncing back from that Donegal defeat where they were, really poor, particularly in the first half, they've got back on the horse immediately, 4 from 5, which Moran would have taken their hand off at the start of the league.
Absolutely. Well, everyone knew, like I knew from talking to the Leitrim boys, how great a manager Andy Moran was. A great player, people person, and brilliant forward coach with Monaghan. And he's one of these infectious, bubbly characters that you'll play for. Now, obviously, there's a fair bit of euphoria and enthusiasm, but all I can say is that so it mightn't be, the hype isn't as big as it used to be, because I can tell you this, reveal exclusively, that I've yet to hold a Mayo for Sam sign for a photograph yet this year. So that means that they're sort of waiting in the long grass. They're a bit unsure.
How many, Pat, on an average year would you hold?
I'd say a dozen a year in,
Okay.
in every place. I've held Mayo for Sam in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, in San Francisco, in Vancouver, in London, you name it. I've stood in front of the Sydney Opera House with Mayo for Sam. I have, and in fairness, I have looked into their eyes. I have looked into their longing eyes when they say, Pat, can we win the All-Ireland? And you start to say, will I be honest, or will I just soft soap them? But there's a lot. Look, there's a lot. At the very minimum, Andy will be aiming for a Connacht title this year. That's the very minimum they get. I like a lot what I see about them at the moment. Yes, they've got a bounce from being a new manager. They have the athleticism and the powerful guys around the middle third, which are suited for the modern game. They certainly are now getting impact from their subs. They certainly have a kicking game, which is vital and which is good for the modern game. I liked them in the second half yesterday. Armagh came at them and they didn't crumble. They scored 1-6 against the Wind. So, it's early days yet, but they're going in the right direction. And I like what I see now. I really like what I see. And, geez, that Connacht, if there's a Galway Mayo Connacht final, it'll be one hell of a cracker. And then, like I said, going to Armagh, like there's a danger, and I agree with Dick. I put Armagh as being one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country. But sometimes in the Premiership you say, they're too good to be relegated. But good teams get relegated, and like Armagh have been brilliant in their games, very competitive. I was just looking; they were beaten by 1 point in 2 league games against Mayo and Galway, 3 points beaten by Roscommon, and 4 points. Like they've been very, very competitive. The only thing about it, and we highlight it every week, they have scored in 5 league matches. How many goals? 1.
Yeah.
1 goal. They are, I think, as far as I know, that is probably the lowest in the country. And do you know what? There was one thing, and I noticed it. Somebody said it to me, and I noticed it again yesterday. McKinney doesn't use subs. They only used 2 subs yesterday. And it wasn't that the 15 were playing brilliant. And the second sub was Ethan Rafferty. So it's strange. I'm not too sure whether, they're not putting the scores away. Are they missing Kieran Donaghy as a forwards coach? Who knows? But like I said, is it the next match is against Dublin? And
yeah, that's a relegation.
And that's a relegation battle. That'll be a cracker.
McGeeney cutting a very frustrated figure, Dick. Like, there's only certainly, you must be banging your head against the wall when this keeps happening week after week.
Understandably so. Again, I said it to that at the first week we spoke here. I watched them in Clonus, absolutely railroad Monaghan, and hugely impressed with their physicality, the spread of scores, everything. They were taking all the boxes. Yeah, we give them a bit of criticism by fisting the ball over the bar, but they're still racked up 30 points. Like, they're averaging, I think, 23 points a game, which, new money, old money, you should have more wins on the board than they have. Yeah.
They're the second highest scoring. They're the second highest scoring team in Division 1.
Yeah, what did they say? Lies, goddamn lies, and statistics. So he what do you say? Like, they're going to have to go down basically and beat Dublin and Croke Park to stay up for all intents and purposes. That's the way it plays out, and they should. And now we said that, Dublin will come to them in a wee minute. They still, if they can deliver the level of performance that they have been and tweak a few bits, figure out in front of goal. Like, there's a bit of a curiosity what they're doing when they get from 20 yards in. They do seem to be caught in 2 minds now, whether they were listening to us. Maybe more people than we think listen to us in terms of, the criticism they went for goal opportunities yesterday that they should have fisted over, and then they still fell into a trap of fisting balls over the bar that they should have been going for a bit of a momentum driver, which what goals do. Like, that's what Mayo got the bounce. They got goals at the right times, and so listen, it's a curious one. He must be very frustrated. He certainly would not want to get relegated. That's not where you want to be. You want to be. So the idea that they've fallen into that sort of trap, but it's of their own doing. Like, they'll have to just go down and pull up their socks and do what has to be done down in Croke Park. Armagh will suit Croke Park. That's the only thing I would say. I think they will. They're top of the ground team. They've got pace on Oisin Connaughty, these lads, and they should relish that. And they'll be going down there with the bit between their teeth. So that could be a cracker. Like Dublin.
You're right, Dick. They tick all the boxes for. They have the athleticism, they have the physicality, and yes, they have forwards as well capable of scoring. But it goes back to one word you mentioned, Michael, when you were talking about Donegal: momentum. Momentum, and this is momentum is important. You come out of it. You win. You have a good league. You have momentum. You have momentum coming into the championship. Armagh, let's say Armagh get beaten by Dublin in their next match in Croke Park and get relegated. Now, they're not bringing much momentum. They're not bringing huge confidence into Ulster Championship. And this is an Ulster Championship that you have Donegal flying. You have Derry getting their mojo back. You have Down, a seriously dark horse. Do you know, you have Tyrone who'll get their act together. So you go into an Ulster Championship lacking momentum and with confidence a bit low, and you'll start to saying it's a bit like in teaching. Do you know, like for years, you know, when you did the mock exam and the lad who failed geography in the mock exam, I said, sir, no, it's okay, I'll be fine on the, you know, when it comes. And the fellow who failed geography in the mock usually failed geography in the leaving cert as well, because they were in denial. So, you know, hoping that things will turn, and we know where things are going wrong. There's no automatic silver bullet that suddenly overnight Armagh will start shooting the lights out and scoring goals, etc. So, and like I said, with a lack of momentum and a lack of confidence, there's a bigger challenge.
Well, you've teed up Dublin perfectly, lads. The clip of you saying they couldn't win an All-Ireland and that they were bang average, Pat, has been, I think there was a clip sent out the previous week and then one last week on the back of their performance. Growing pains, Ger Brennan described it as.
Sorry, but I looked at the thing yesterday. Spillane says they couldn't win the All-Ireland, but I didn't say they wouldn't win the All-Ireland. I said they'll find it hard to win the Leinster Championship based on the form we've seen in the first 4 league games. And can I see an All-Ireland in this team based on the evidence from the first 4 rounds? Of course not. Did I write off Dublin's chances for the All-Ireland? I'm not that stupid. I did not write off Dublin's chances. But like, what you want as a manager is you want a reaction. You want an improvement in performance. He got a reaction from his senior players, who he criticised fairly publicly a couple of weeks ago. Kieran Kilkenny yesterday was man of the match. Bugler was very good. Brian Howard was very good. Scully was very good. Owen Murchie was very good. They're the leaders. They were very good. What I liked about them, I mean, their first half performance, 113 to no score. Their accuracy was 5-2 pointers. Like, I presume that's a first for this Dublin team under the new rules to score 5-2 pointers. I would say from play. I'd say it is.
And without Con, Pat.
And without Con, who's the main. What else did I see? Like, okay, you saw their game management in the second half when they were against the wind. Roscommon never looked like. Remember, Roscommon were 13 points down against Galway with the wind in the previous round and still beat Galway. They never looked like it last week because Dublin were in control of the game. But what I liked was their character, their attitude, their work rate, and the way their leaders stood up. Like 5 matches, and I think I saw a stat today. They've used 33 players in the 5 matches. That's a fair turnover for players. So by the time he'll get around to the business end of the championship, he'll be close to knowing what his best 15 is. Do I still think, based on evidence, are they in the top 4 at the moment? No, they're not. So,
yeah, okay.
Not that nail in the head.
No.
Dick, just on, they obviously had the aid of a breeze or whatever, but they were slinging over 2-pointers for sport there. Even like, I can't remember the last time I've seen kind of Niall Scully even try an effort from out around there. They looked, I'm sure it's something they're going after midweek. It'll probably take a time for it to actually be polished up. But they looked a lot more comfortable, shall we say, at trying those shots that have been alien to them, realistically, for nearly more than a decade at this stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of things at play in that game yesterday, because there was an eye-catching sort of half-time result. I think Roscommon were favourites with the bookies, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
So there was 3 main factors that sometimes you get a sort of curious one. Roscommon were probably a wee bit complacent. Like, we sort of criticised Mayo patting themselves in the back a wee bit too much when they went up to Donegal and got sent home with the tail between their legs. There's a wee bit of that, and that happens. And I know that as a player, that seeps in, when you think you're a wee bit further down the tracks than you are. On the flip side of that, Dublin were under pressure to deliver a performance. They had no sense of complacency. They were the gun was rightly been put to them over two really shocking performances. Even though they got the points against Mayo, Monaghan, they were dreadful, and they were worse again against Kerry. So they were under huge pressure to deliver something. Give me something, Ger Brendan. And you can imagine that would have had to been very tough. So you had two teams coming together, and then the elements. So and that's just what you want when you're the team looking for a performance. You turn up and you've got the wind at your back in the first half, and they went at them, and next thing. So the game probably took on a different life than it might have otherwise, because all those things sort of combined. So I will hold fire on Dublin until after next weekend's game against Armagh, because they got to follow that up, because now they're meeting an Armagh team that they are under pressure to get a result. So they're coming down with, I wouldn't just say the psychological advantage, but they certainly won't be at a disadvantage. Whereas Dublin, they might be patting themselves, maybe thinking they're a wee bit better than they are, but we'll see. They have to back that up now.
And of course, the big thing, Dick, is if they finish level on 4 points, it's the head-to-head. That's right. Head-to-head could decide who's relegated.
Absolutely. So that's why to me it's very much a relegation sort of was there. So let's see, can they back that up?
Yeah.
And that's it on a fast, unforgiving pitch that is, and there's even if there's a hard wind blowing, Croke Park's generally well sheltered, so there's no sense of slinging 2-pointers over with the wind at your back. You're going to have to earn every score that you get there. So let's hold fire. I think, but yet I like Ger Brendan. I think he's a breath of fresh air. I think he's a good character to have in the GAA, and it's good to see him get a result, because I'm not one of these ones that subscribe to you need a strong Dublin for the GAA, but equally it's good to have them competitive and good to have them pitching up there. So it's good that he got a bounce, because I think he's a genuine person who's passionate about Dublin, and he's trying to do things the right way. He genuinely is trawling the clubs around Dublin to try and give everybody his shout. So you want to see a manager with that sort of ethos get a return. Now let's see, can he back it up?
Michael,
go on, Pat.
I saw after last night, after the Alliance League Sunday, Kerry supporters were quite incensed. There was only a couple of minutes, really blink and you missed it, highlight show of Kerry against Monaghan. And Kerry supporters yesterday were eating crosses. This will tell you, they went from the football game on Radio Kerry to 7 or 8 minutes of the ladies' football game, and all hell broke loose. So on behalf of Kerry supporters and as a Kerry person, can we give serious and in-depth analysis to the Kerry performance against Monaghan?
Oh, no. We need to come on. All right, go on.
7 points, Monaghan's tally. That must be the lowest. That must be the lowest tally since the rules were brought in any sort of a reasonally competitive game.
In the top tier, I would comfortably say it is. I'm sure there's certainly some anomaly somewhere, but yeah, listen, we don't need to say it every week in, week here, boys. Like,
I can say it. I'd say it instead.
No, you don't, Pat. And like at the same time, if it was Sligo and your lad sticking their head up and getting it chopped up every day, you wouldn't want them to be rubbed into the ground. All right. So like, and you learn this now following Sligo, it can be a tough place when a team in the middle ranks sort of put themselves together and put themselves up. And when the cards fall against you, it can be uncomfortable, and it's difficult for those Monaghan players at the minute. It's difficult. I had planned to go down.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes, Pat.
And can I just ask you a question? Yeah. I completely empathise with what you're on about. Yeah, I know what I'm.
You don't know, right? You don't. We know, because you lived a completely different existence to me, Pat, as a player. But you learn that with Sligo. Okay,
I'm that soldier as a supporter now, experienced watching Sligo struggling. Right, so I know that.
Yes.
But when I looked at it, and I get all that about, like, we're not personalising anything. We're just dealing with performances. We're dealing with results. We're dealing with why a team wins, why a team loses. And I mean, when you're down, there's no point in jumping on somebody when you're down. No. And yeah, you're right. I mean, just one query, right? What I couldn't figure out, right? So Monaghan play with the wind yesterday, right? I get that. They scored 4 points with the wind. 2 forwards got the grand total of 2 points. Mm-hmm. And their best forward is brought on at half-time to play against the wind. Now, Can you explain that to me? I can't.
Will you? Alison asked me that when we were sitting at home listening to it. Well, there's 2 things. Well, because they actually done it differently, and that's why I was surprised against Meath last year when they blew Meath out of the water. They actually did. They brought, I think Jack was brought on before the throw-in, Now that means you have to use up a sub.
Yeah.
Because you only literally find out, 2 minutes before the ball is thrown in what way you're playing, and then if you have to make that decision, it costs you a sub. And they did that. Now they didn't choose to do that because Jack probably doesn't have 60 minutes in him, and it sort of let it sort of play out like that. But yeah, I think going back to your earlier point, Pat, the wind dictates such a lot. I think there is a big thing now. If you've got an impact sub, a Kobe McDonald, a Michael Murphy, a Jack McCarn, playing with the wind at your back, whatever way it is.
That's
you know what I mean? Especially with the two. So they did do it. And listen, it's sort of a bit of a moot point. It wasn't going to fundamentally change the result, but it could have. They needed to be going in ahead with that wind, and they could have done. Like they could have done with and it left it competitive. So that I would have felt that was a bit of an own goal, that they could have at least give themselves a bit of a fighting chance to keep them in the game and keep it competitive, because unfortunately it just played out like I feared it might. And listen, that's just what Monaghan had. It's going to be tough. Now, at the same time, I'm looking now to the Ulster Championship, and they've got Cavan at home in the first round, and I would have seen of Cavan that's a game to win, and then they've got a game against Derry potentially in a semi-final. So we just need to get through the league, take the few games. We don't have to travel, thank God. We've got 2 home games against Donegal and Galway, and try to get a few players back. But it's been tough, and Sunday was no different.
As regards Kerry, I mean, that Kerry performance, when the highlights reel is going to be compiled at the end of the year, there'll be no few minutes of that game, because it was a first half. They were sleepwalking. They were cute enough. They went down to 14 men with a black card for 10 minutes, and they still won the first half by a point. Second half, they moved into third gear, and yes, 113 to 3 points. They outscored at David Clifford's cameo. 10 minutes. 1-2, jeez. And like you said, very unusual. Normally, it's that hook shot he takes. Yesterday, he took a brilliant point from the outside of the left. I mean, the man knows not. From a Kerry point of view, the positives, Jason Foley is playing very well. My clubmate, Tyke Morley, and I told you about Tyke. Tyke is 31 now. He's 31 years of age. Didn't go on the team holiday because wanted to train hard and get back to playing on starting, and he's playing very well at the moment. Amric Heinrich at wing-back is another revelation during the league, playing very, very impressive. If there's a negative from the Kerry point of view, at 47 minutes, Paddy hobbled off with what looked like hamstring issues, so hopefully he's not injured, because Paddy was back to his best while he was on the field yesterday, scoring 4 points. So, like I said, very disappointing match. Difficult conditions. The crowd, and I know Monaghan people aren't, the crowd was 4,500, which is about half what it should be for a National League game. So forgettable in every. The only good news, by the way, sorry, we talked about Kerry being so successful. We're number 1 in the charts again this week in Kerry. Did you see that? That the people of Kerry go to more funerals than any other county. Do you know that? 10 per year. Kerry are number 1. We're a very caring people.
So the average Kerry person goes to 10 funerals a year?
Yeah, whereas the Dubs go to only 2.
Wow, okay.
Funerals or wakes, because they're very different things. So you actually go to the burial, because the big thing now is people go to a wake, they don't go to funerals. You actually go to, because at least you get a sandwich and a cup of tea at the wake.
They don't even do that in Kerry.
Can I just throw it at the two? You mentioned there about McCarron.
Pull us back out of that rabbit hole.
A small bit. What's the cutest move you've ever seen a manager make, particularly pre-throw-in? Like I remember chatting Michael Cleary that played with Tipperary, and my own clubmate Padjo Whelan was over Nina when they won their only county title in Tipperary, and he said the toss was made and he made 3 moves straight away, 3 different people in for the start, because I forget whether they were playing with it or against it, but he changed the team completely. And it's a situation as a manager, you want to, like if I have a lad that has 30 minutes in him, maybe, now I'm not saying McCarron has 30 minutes in him, I'm not going to bring him on against the breeze. Do you know what I mean? Any moves, Dick, in your own career?
Well, it was technically pre-throw-in, but not just as that tight. It was the day that's in 2010, a couple of hours it was before we played Armagh in the first round of the championship in Casement Park. Banty decided to play Darren Hughes in goals. And remember that? Yeah. Did you think about it? They had Darren Hughes in goals, and never forget going into the morning meeting in the West End or in town, and we were going well at the time. We had ambitions like to win Ulster, and we were going well. We were in Division 1, and we were all just, what the heck? We knew we had a goalkeeping issue, but we were like, Right, that's so like I'd say a lot of the supporters on the day only got wind of it when Darren sort of rocked out, and it paid off in that game. Not sure if it paid off over the duration of the summer, but that was it, because that was sort of a bit of a head spinner.
That's as left field as they come now.
It was a wee bit, in fairness. So that's a quiz question. What's the only, I'd say, inter-county player has played in every line? Like Darren would have technically played in every line, be it McKenna Cup, League, or Championship. I'd say there's not too many has done that. So there's one for you for a quiz question down the years.
Any move like that, Pat? Like
what unusual position did I play in one time in an All-Ireland final?
All-Ireland final.
Wing back?
No.
You have me.
Goals.
What's the All-Ireland final now?
Whichever year, who was sent off? I played in, I stood in goals, but somebody was sent off. I remember moving into goals for 2 minutes. I can't remember what final.
In the All-Ireland senior final?
I suppose it was a final. It was against some crowd. Whoever was, I don't know, my memory's bad.
So there he goes. That's a favour in the jar. I've played in that many All-Irelands, I can't remember. That's
maybe it was a semi-final, but I did play in, I think it was a final. Who was sent off? Or somebody got injured. Maybe it was a Paddy Manny got injured or something. I can't remember. But actually, when you're talking about weird stuff, I suppose you have to hand it to Mickey Hart, taking off and bringing on Peter Canavan and that. Which All-Ireland was it? I mean, that was outside the box thinking. That was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that was definitely outside the box, and I don't think too many people saw it coming either.
No.
He was either going to start or he was either going to finish. He wasn't going to start, come off and finish. So that's good. Darren Hughes, that's a good one now.
That's a good one.
It's good. I was chatting Darren after Scottstown beat Naomh Connell, and I said, Michael Verney from the Irish Independent, would you have a quick word? He says, of course I will. I'm only after paying my subscription there last week or whatever. So yeah, glad to have a word. Lads, we just moved to Division 2 quickly. It was it's unfortunate, like the weekend where Division 2 got a hell of a lot of coverage. There was a lot of damn squibs in Division 2, unfortunately. Meath beat Kildare comfortably, like really had them at arm's length throughout. Cork, like, absolutely getting battered by Derry, like battered. Yeah. Couldn't believe it as Pat was going through crazy scores. Couldn't believe it when I saw that score, 131-14. Loud, big win over Cavan as well. Unfortunate, Pat, given the nature of how good Division 2 has been so far, and obviously Tyrone beating Mayo and Offaly as well, even though Offaly were tight enough with them up in Dungannon for a while, but Tyrone pulled well clear in the wind-up. It was unfortunate that the focus was on this weekend.
It was unfortunate, yeah, and like it was nice that Division 2 got their time in the spotlight, and that there was live television, with the exception of Cork and Derry. Let's deal with the Derry Cork one quickly. 131 is unbelievable scoring, and I mean, again, like we talked about Armagh, they have the physicality, they have the athleticism, they have the powerful runners from deep, McKinless and them. Conor Glass was immense at midfield. McGuigan was absolutely brilliant. What was it? All 6 forwards scored. What was it? What was the stat? 125 scored by the starting 6 forwards of Derry. It was just brilliant football. And this was a Cork team who had beaten Meath the previous round. So an amazing result. And you know what? They left, in my calculation, Derry left 3 goal chances behind them that they should have put through. An amazing performance. Cork, all they can hope for is that it was a once-off, that bad performance. They're in Portugal this week for a 3-4 day training camp, so that there'll be a lot of hard truths. But that second half there, 21-5, they were just not at the races. They were standing off their opponents. They were too easily rounded. There was too much space in defence. They were very poor. Louth were immense. I loved, like, the goal from Louth, by the way, and I know it was highlighted, but that Kieran Downey goal, 3 from the goalie, 3 kicks, goal, absolutely brilliant. Sam Mulroy, and he was playing a lot out the field, but his kick passing, his shooting we know is brilliant. His kick passing, he played a quartermaster, like a quarterback, just absolutely brilliant. Cavan, on the other hand, they were dismal. What was it? They were 18 points down after 40-something minutes. They were just not at the races. And this was a Cavan team who probably should have beaten Cork in round 1 or were competitive. So a very disappointing performance. Very disappointing performance from Kildare as well. I know Kildare are in transition. I know they're an inexperienced team, but geez, they just weren't at the races. Their kickouts were poor. I like Meath. Their game management against the wind was very good. Their kicking game is very good. they scored 2-pointers. It was a very, very, very impressive performance. And Jordan Morris, one of the top forwards in the game, class act.
Pat, I have to come back to you for a second here. It's in my ear here. Legendary, you love this obviously. Legendary Kerry footballer Pat Spillane played as a goalkeeper for a short time during the All-Ireland final. It was 1978. Against Dublin. The situation, Kerry goalkeeper Charlie Nelligan was sent off, leading to a temporary reshuffle where Spillane took over in goal. Despite this unusual situation, Kerry won that game comfortably, obviously forming part of the famous 4 in a row before our own lads in Offaly ended the 5 in a row the year after.
I'm surprised you didn't take that as an insult, Pat, that you were deemed as dispensable out the field. I'll throw Pat in goals. Mikey Sheehy or J.R. Power. No, that
I put myself into goals. No one told me to go into goals. I just happened to be floating around and noticed that we hadn't a goalie, so I just ambled into the goal.
So that's 2 quiz questions we have.
Geez, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Dick, just on Division 2, it's kind of there was no rhyme or reason to some of the results of the weekend.
It was like the whole weekend. It was a bit meh. You know, as you say, every scoreline were double digits, and there was nothing to get excited about. The Cavan Louth game should have been a good game, and you can see why it was sort of picked as a game that should have been at least competitive. But not only was it uncompetitive, it was a very poor standard. Louth done what they had to do to win it. You can't fault them. The rest of them, Derry. Now Cork traditionally don't travel well. Like it's never a nice bit of Cork player, going up to away pitches, especially up north, and there might be more players on the bloody Cork sideline than there would be supporters in the stand. So especially up in Derry. So and maybe if they're heading away to Portugal or wherever it is the week ahead, they already are getting maybe giddy about thought of a bit of sunshine, which maybe can be forgiven.
I can give you the useless stat. The average winning margin in the 4 Division 2 games at the weekend was over 13 points. Holy God!
There you go. Yeah. Which you probably wouldn't have expected, but I suppose it leans into the conditions and the way the new rules have a wee bit of go. So I wouldn't rule too much in them. Derry aren't that good. Cork aren't that bad. Meath are what they are. Tyrone, they were pushed by what is a struggling Offaly team. So there's concerns. But it needs to be more than that, Pat. That's at home against a team that is sort of a Division 3 side. So Tyrone have more to do, and they know that. They're sort of trying to figure themselves out. They're still in a team that don't know really what their best team or layout is or method of play, and there'll not be too much more patience with Malachy and his team. They need to start finding something to sort of get into the summer. Louth have kicked on, so it'll be interesting to see where the last couple of weeks play out, because there's 2 places up for grab there, and there's sort of four teams punching for them, and both of them, whoever comes out of that will be well fit to compete in Division 1 from what we've seen so far. So it'll make for a good Division 2, because all those counties should want to get to Croke Park for Division 2 final and sort of cap off a good league campaign and finish it off. So we'll see what way it plays out. But a bit of as I say, a meh weekend overall,
Yeah, Derry have bounced back very well from that opening weekend against Meath. They're after putting themselves in a good spot, obviously, and they've got very positive score difference as well, which should help. They've negative head-to-head with Meath, obviously, and a positive head-to-head with Cork, which will could tell a lot by the end of it all. Pat, I know you always have a close eye in Division 3. There's only 2 unbeaten teams in the country. One is Donegal, the other is Down. They've struggled to get out of Division 3 for a while, but they look nearly certain to get out of it now.
Well, as you know, I always slag off Alliance League Sunday for their neglect of Division 3 and Division 4 football and the results and the matches. So can I just give you exactly the amount of time they devoted to Division 3 and Division 4 last night? Put a guess on it, lads.
25 seconds.
Minute and a half.
Just less than 50 seconds. Joanne managed to ad-lib who won and who lost. And in actual fact, it was done so quickly that she hadn't finished ad-libbing the Division 3 couple of matches, because when the Division 4 league table flicked up on the table. So there's only tokenism and a joke.
The one thing I will say is, Pat, that we're obviously here. We're obviously here reviewing the games as well. And it is hard to cover everything.
Of course it is. Like, there's no doubt about it. But we'll argue the split season. So, but maybe like when you have hurling matches, when you have all the football matches all played at the same weekend, it's inevitable. But it's when you're trying to tick every box and keep everyone happy, and you start with the football, then you squeeze the hurling in the middle, and then you hope that the football fellas haven't gone to sleep at 11 o'clock and they'll hang in there for the last half an hour. Yeah, going to Division 3, down at the Forum team. They're the only team in the country now with a 100% record. They're a serious outfit. We saw them last year being very competitive in the championship. They went to, they did a training camp already in Portugal this year. Now, I don't know how many Division 3 teams go on training camps, if any. Down are a serious outfit. They will get promoted, play Sligo in the next round away, but I think they're already promoted. Westmeath now, that was a big shock now for Westmeath to be beaten by Laois. Westmeath will have I still think they'll get promoted, but they haven't, that's 2 defeats now. But it should be Westmeath will probably get promoted. The relegation, it looks like Fermanagh are gone, and it'll be between Limerick and Sligo. A lot could depend on Sligo's last game, which is against Clare. If Clare are still in the promotion race, if Clare are not in the promotion race, Sligo have a chance. Actually, one player, Sligo were deservedly beaten by a much bigger, stronger Wexford team yesterday. But Wexford have a player operating who's probably, in my opinion, one of the best in Division 3, Liam Coleman at midfield. A serious player. They dominated the middle. They dominated possession. I'd say Wexford had 70+% of possession. That's how. And then going to Division 4. Big shock in Division 4. Like Carlow being beaten by Longford. I still think Carlow will get promotion, but Longford have surprised me because I thought they'd struggled this year. Wicklow are still back in the promotion race. So
Wicklow were beaten at the weekend. They're under pressure.
Wicklow were beaten by Antrim, but they're still in the promotion race.
Just about.
Antrim, who for the first 3 rounds were woeful, have got their act together, beating Leitrim in the last round and surprisingly beating Wicklow yesterday. So
you could never get up on 8 points, could you? You could never be promoted with 8 points. I don't think you could anyway.
No, get it very tight.
Jeez,
it's going to be.
I wouldn't think so. But they started terribly, and they're kind of back on the horse now. Mark Doran had a really difficult time. The hurlers and the footballers were both going very, very poorly. And Antrim, when he came down from Division 3,
left the panel in Antrim.
Yeah, it's not simple now.
It's not good. Antrim, I was just looking at 3 and 4. The 2 things that jump out is Fermanagh, rock bottom of 3. I've, my mother's from Fermanagh, and I know a lot of people over there. Fermanagh's competed very well, over the last couple of decades. That's not good. Declan Bonner's in there as manager, and it's a long time. I can't remember them. I could be wrong here. I have a poor, uncompetitive league than I've seen. So obviously things are not good in Fermanagh football.
But they lost their 2 warriors there, the 2 Cullens.
Yeah. And then there was issues with the Joneses and stuff so they can't replace guys like that in terms of physicality and all the rest. That's not good for a county like Fermanagh to be dropping back, and even an Antrim should be more competitive than that. Down, just keep an eye on Down. I remember going to the Monaghan Down game in the Athletic Grounds last year was one of the best contests and spectacles they've been, and Monaghan edged out in front, but there's enough in that Down performance to suggest that there's something there to build on if they can keep together. And this is the key thing, and not to dwell on it, but every year there's a dozen or so counties in that sort of middle ground, outside of the top half a dozen and above the other counties that are struggling at the bottom, and they'll sort of put their head up and they'll make a bit of progress, and they might get promoted, or they might. And it's a case of sticking beyond year 3, I always say, because a lot of them sort of give up. Do you know what I mean? They get up and have a tough year, and boys leave the panel, and there's a change up. And this is where counties and even for yourself, Sligo, when you're talking to your young lad, that's what a Sligo has to do. There has to be more than just a bit of a bounce. You have to try and build a panel, build momentum. And it's tough. The toughest place, Mike, and I'm reflecting on the Monaghan thing at the minute. The toughest place to be is in the middle. It's not that tough at the top, because it's not hard to convince guys to come in and compete and play at Division 1 and go to Croke Park and go to Killarney and beat Kerry teams that Monaghan did there for a long time. And it's not that tough at the bottom, because you're putting nothing in. Despite the counties that'll turn up and say, we do that same training as we do as the Dublin do. I was down there before, and I knew what we done.
I had people, you said something like that before, and I had people going, absolutely mental with me.
Do you know
over
what?
it.
Like, give them my number, and I'll have a chat to them, because I
do.
was in both. I was in both, and I knew it wasn't particularly tough because you weren't putting in the effort. You really were. The middle bit is tough. Your countries coming together, and you are genuinely trying to improve and throw yourself into it, and it's difficult because sometimes you get nothing for it.
I agree with you, and you're talking about Fermanagh. Fermanagh is a county with small resources, small playing population, and they're a team in transition, and the talent. There's a conveyor belt of young talent in Kerry. It doesn't happen in Fermanagh. And I see something similar with Sligo. Sligo are a small county with only a small number of GA clubs. And they have given league debuts to 11 young lads this year, 11 players. That, they're coming from a much lower base into a really competitive, tough Division 3, playing the likes of Down and whatever like that, or a big, strong, physical Wexford team down in Wexford Park. And it's a big ask to suddenly overnight become a top inter-county player.
Yeah.
You always made the point, Pat, and not to labour on the point that there's in every county there's 15 players. There's an element of truth in it, right? But the challenge is that there isn't 15 or 20 players that have the capability or the potential to be a county footballer and compete. The trick is nowadays is keeping them in the tent long enough that they can realise that.
Yeah.
And if you look at all those, and you're nodding there, Mike, because it's the same in the Offaly's and all those sort of middle Ireland counties that I'd sort of talk about, that they're always sort of seem to be sort of spinning in the muck. If you go into their panels and look at their turnover rate, there's not enough guys that are sort of sticking at it long enough that sort of builds a team.
Well, the reason, Dick,
and that's the challenge, and it is tough.
If you chat to any of your former teammates or lads that have just stepped away, nearly all of them had unbroken service, no year out, all unbroken.
And that was the single differentiator in Monaghan than all those other counties that should have been at the same level or could have been. It was that. I met Vinnie Corey at a basketball game where two young lads were playing on Sunday morning. We were just sort of chatting and reflecting on it. He'd 15, 16, 17 years. I had something the same. And it's not looking for pats on the back. We'd have won nothing without it. And we would have not have been in at the top table for the last 2 decades, which we essentially have. The reality is there's too many guys in the Monaghan panel that don't have that service yet. And what I want, that's why I'm sort of defending them here. I want to keep them in the tent, because if they get a kick in and they sort of get people turn their backs on them, what'll happen? Monaghan will slip back and they'll start spinning in the muck like all those other counties, because those guys will jack it after a year 2 or 3.
But the problem is, Dick, and one of the problems, and we were not going into the split season, but you take a county like Offaly, which is a small in terms of population, very successful with both hurling and football, but the playing population, the top quality players are not as plentiful as in other counties. And you take a county like Offaly with the limited playing in a congested footballing season, playing so many matches. Offaly have 11 injured. 11 of their senior panel are out injured. I mean, a small county like Offaly cannot overcome that, whereas Kerry can.
Yeah. The schedule favours stronger counties with greater depth, etc., etc.
It does.
Gents, thanks very much as always. It always gets a bit heated at some stage. There's no harm.
Good to be back.
No harm. There's something wrong.
I listened to last week, and Pat was. And listen, Pat, huge. Congrats on your Tommy Tiernan. I watched it over the weekend. It was a very busy week with work, and I only got sitting on Friday night to watch it, and I enjoyed it immensely. It was good to see you speechless for once. I have to try Michael have to learn that trick of Tommy. and
I promise to say all nice things for Monaghan for the rest of the year.
Oh man, lads, thanks very much.